Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today I've got a 12-game Major League Baseball slate for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It really does help the channel a lot. I also would like you to put a comment down in the comments below who your home run call is today. And if your guy hits a home run, I will mention you in the video. The only issue here is if somebody already called the player that you want to call, then you need to call somebody different. So do keep that in mind. But with that said, let's get into this slate. Like I said, smash that like and subscribe button. For my core plays, I have Josh Naylor, Brandon Lowe, Steven Kwan, and Brandon Nemo are my core plays on DraftKings. Josh Naylor is my home run call for today for Cleveland. And on FanDuel, I have Naylor, Lowe, and Machado. Machado is just way too cheap here on FanDuel, so he's a great option on the slate. With that said, let's go ahead and get into our top plays here. First on DraftKings, we're going to start with our pitching and look at Nestor Cortez. Now, he does have some nice upside here, and though he doesn't have a ton of strikeouts in his games against the Twins last year. He's a little bit risky as a result, but he started the season okay with 2 average games against average teams, and he's got a similar situation here. He is one of the better pitchers on the slate, so he does have some value, but he's a little bit risky, but he's a little bit cheaper too than some of the other options. Then we're going to look at Kodai Sengi. Sorry for butchering your name. He started the season extremely well with 2 games against Miami. Both those games he had at least 6 strikeouts, and he only gave up a couple earned runs on those 2 games. I look for him to have a similar 5 to 7 strikeout game here, and hopefully no earned runs, but maybe just 1. And if he can do that, then he should be able to get another good mid-20 fantasy point game, and I think that's definitely viable on the slate. He's got the matchup that's very nice for this as well. His price is really the big issue here, but he is the best strikeout pitcher on the slate based on how he started the season, so he's definitely worth a look here. Luis Garcia here for Houston. Now, he has not started the season very well at all. In 2 games, he's given up 7 earned runs, and so he's having a little bit of a rough go. But he does have a decent strikeout rate most of the time, and he did play 2 good games against he had played some good games in the past against Texas, and if Texas rolls out 7 right-handed hitters, then he'll definitely be a decent option here. But he's a little bit risky due to the fact he hasn't played particularly well to start the season. And then we'll look at Charlie Morton for Atlanta. Now, I really do like him today. I think he's a little bit overpriced, but he has some tendency to be streaky as well. But he does have good strikeout potential here, and Kansas City is a team that does like to strike out as well, and he's one of the best strikeout rate players on this slate, despite the fact he had a rough start of the season. But I mean, when you play St. Louis and San Diego to start the year, that can kind of be rough sometimes. So I do think he's a viable option on the slate. Pitching is really rough today. We have other pitchers that you could look at, and Rasmussen and Sandoval and also Lauer, but they're all in good, tough matchups. Also, Michael Waka is somewhat interesting, but they're all in tough matchups, so they're really hard to roster on the slate. Let's go ahead and get into our catchers. Now, the best catcher available today is going to be Adley Rutschman for Baltimore. He has some nice upside. He's hit the ball extremely well to start the season at 373 average. He's had a bunch of games in a row with really good fantasy output, and I like him in this matchup. He's just extremely expensive, and he is somewhat hard to roster as a result of that. Right now, I also like Sean Murphy. Despite the fact that he hasn't hit the ball particularly great, he's had 3 straight games with at least 7 fantasy points, and he has some nice upside in this matchup. But if you want to save some money, Cal Raleigh is a really interesting way to go. He's pretty cheap, and he has home run potential in this matchup. I'm also going to mention Wilson Contreras from Milwaukee. He's hit the ball extremely well to start the season, and he will hit a home run eventually because he's a good home run hitter, and this is a good matchup for him to potentially do that in, so do keep him in mind, and he's a little bit cheaper. That helps you pay for some other guys. At first base, we're going to start with Matt Olson. Now, he's very expensive here, but he's hit 4 home runs already this season, and he sees the ball really well. He has had 7 strikeouts the last 2 games, so that's a little bit of a concern, but he does have some nice upside in this plus matchup against Kansas City. Josh Naylor is one of my core plays. I think he's a great option on the slate. I think he's going to hit a home run today. He's hit the ball somewhat inconsistently to start the season, but he's got all the metrics in his favor of this matchup, and he looks like a really good option on the slate. I also like the fact that he hits from the left against a pitcher who stinks against left-handed hitters. Then we'll look at Anthony Rizzo for the Yankees. Rizzo has hit the ball pretty well to start the season, and he's got some good upside in this match in this situation, and he's about the same price as Naylor, and he's a good alternative. Jose Abreu is also very interesting for Houston in this matchup. He has yet to hit a home run this season, but he will hit one eventually, and he's in a pretty good spot here to potentially do it. At second base, we're going to take a look at Brandon Lowe, and if you think Tampa Bay is going to continue their dominance, then he's going to be somebody who's going to have a good game here. He's played really well, and he's actually had home runs in 4 of the last 5 games, or 5 of the last 6 games, rather. And if he can keep that going, that's going to definitely catapult Tampa Bay to continue on. Andre Jimenez is a good option as an alternative to him at second base. He has some good upside here for Cleveland. I really do like Cleveland today. They have some nice upside, and this is a good matchup for him. And then Bay for Pittsburgh. He's kind of a Hail Mary, almost a Hail Mary option on the slate. He's got some good potential in this matchup in a plus situation. And then Jeff McNeil. He's a kind of a value play here as well. He hasn't hit a home run yet this season either, but he does have some nice upside here and has some good fantasy point output potential. Then we're going to look at third base, and we're going to start with Jose Ramirez. Now, he's expensive, but he has some nice upside. He hasn't hit a home run yet, and he is somewhat due. I look for him to have some really good really good upside in this situation. I really love Manny Machado today, even though he's a little bit higher priced here on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel. He did hit a home run yesterday, finally, and and he's hitting the ball decently well. He's had 5 hits in the last 5 games, including a couple extra base hits and stuff, and he's been walked a couple times. He can get a stolen base every now and then, so I do think he's worth taking a look at. Eugenio Suarez really looks good today for Seattle in this matchup. He's hit the ball extremely well to start the season. He's got good metrics and good upside here, and it's just a matter of time before he hits another home run. And then we'll look at Gunnar Hernandez, who's kind of a value play, kind of a risky Hail Mary option even. He hasn't hit the ball particularly well. If he can get on base, he definitely has some potential for steals, and he has been getting some walks a few times. He just hasn't hit the ball particularly well so far this season, but he's a good value play at the price point, and it's going to be hard to find really good options at these positions. At at shortstop, we're going to start with Hernandez for Boston. Where is he? His name's Kiki or Enrique Hernandez. He has not hit the ball from very well so far this season, but he does have 2 home runs. He's kind of a boomer bust play, but at this position, there's almost nothing that I really like at shortstop. And you could also put Gunnar Henderson in here, but he is definitely worth taking a look at. Dahlbeck is also interesting here for Boston. Another guy who hasn't really hit the ball very much yet this season, but he's only played in a couple games. He only started twice. So if he does draw the start today, he'll definitely be somebody that can help you pay up. He's probably the best under $2,500 option on the entire slate. Haggerty for Seattle is also in that range, though he hasn't hit the ball well yet this season either. He definitely has some upside in this matchup, but he's high risk, high reward, Hail Mary option. Shortstop is really a mess today. I just don't like anything at it. In the outfield, we are going to look at Aaron Judge first. Now, Judge has all the upside you want, and he's got a really good matchup here against a weak pitcher, so I really like him in this situation. But he is a little bit risky since he hasn't hit a home run in a few games, and, if he doesn't hit a home run, he's usually not going to pay off with that price point being so high. Mike Trout really looks good today for the Angels. His price is actually fairly reasonable. He hasn't hit the ball particularly great, though, so far this season. And so we do like to get him going before we start utilizing him on a everyday basis. But that's one reason why his price is not over $6,000. But he has this home run potential here as much as anybody on the slate. And then for some value plays in the outfield, we're going to start with Steven Kwan, who looks like a really good option today. He's not really a home run threat most of the time, but he does hit the ball pretty well, and he has stolen base potential and walk potential, and those things give him some nice utility on the slate, and he's a decent price, not a great price, but a decent one. Brandon Nimmo, also a decent price today for the Mets. He has not hit a home run yet this season, but he also hits the ball pretty well, and he's got some nice utility here in this matchup, especially with several good games in a row lately. So I think he's got some nice utility, and his price has come down a little bit. Chase McCormick for Houston is also very interesting today at $3,900. He's actually been hitting the ball pretty well to start the season. He's got some really good upside here, and he has home run potential in this matchup. And then we're going to look at Bay, who I already mentioned, and at the other position in second base, he's definitely viable in the outfield as well. And then Andrew Benintendi for Chicago White Sox. He started the season okay batting average wise, but he hasn't had a home run yet. But he does have some nice upside in this matchup, and if Chicago can get going, this is not a bad matchup for him to potentially do well. He also has stolen base potential as well. So he's what I like here on DraftKings. Let's move over to FanDuel. For the pitchers, we kind of basically have the same pitchers in Senga, Morton, see here, Morton here, and then Cortez, and Garcia. And I kind of ranked them in the opposite order as that I have them on DraftKings because of the way their prices are so different here. Morton and Garcia are basically the same price here on FanDuel, and I do think that they both have a lot better upside than trying to fit in Senga or Cortez. So I definitely recommend probably going a little bit cheaper on the pitching if you can, just because there's not, even though there's more value here on FanDuel, it's still going to be hard to roster a really top tier lineup here. So let's go and get into our catchers and first baseman. Now, Matt Olson is actually pretty expensive over here at $4,300, but he's definitely worth a look here. My favorite option, though, is Josh Naylor, who's got some really nice upside here. He's super cheap over here, and I think he's going to hit a home run today. So he's somebody I'm going to have locked into my into the roster here on FanDuel. Then we're looking at Adley Rutschman, who has hit a home run yesterday, and I look for him to have more potential here again. He's hitting the ball really well to start the year, and he's had some really good games in a row. I look for that to continue here, and his price is actually okay for this situation. Anthony Rizzo also looks very good here on FanDuel for his price. He's priced under, though he is a boom or bust option. He definitely has some utility here as a good player. Brandon Lowe for Tampa Bay at second base is one of my top plays here. And he's hit 5 home runs in 6 games, and if he can continue to hit the ball as well as he has, he could have another big game here. His price is expensive, but he's definitely worth trying to fit in your lineup. Andres Jimenez is a very good option here for Cleveland, and he can also play shortstop, which is somewhat limited on this slate, and so I do think he is a viable option, and his price is reasonable enough that you can list him in either position. And then Bay for Pittsburgh, he's kind of a low-end Hail Mary option. He's not cheap enough over here on FanDuel to make him a good play, but he's still an okay play on the slate. Jose Ramirez has some really nice upside in this matchup, though he is priced a little bit higher than I wanted him to be over here to utilize him, especially with Manny Machado being available at this position for $3,000. Manny Machado is a must-play on the slate, I think, at this price. He has some nice upside, and he's played really well as of late. Eugenio Suarez is also playing really well, and he's got some really good upside here too, and he's priced about the same as Machado, so if you want a contrarian option, he's definitely where to go. Alex Bregman for Houston is also in a great spot here. He has some really nice upside at this position, and he has good potential for a home run. He's had 3 straight games over 20 fantasy points as well. Then we're going to look at shortstop and look at Gunnar Henderson. Now, Gunnar is in a interesting spot. He's high risk, high reward here. His price is cheap enough that he's definitely viable, but he is hard to roster. He is not the most obvious option at this position, especially when you could put Andre Jimenez over here. But you could also look at Willie Adames for Milwaukee. Now, his batting average, I would like it to come up some, and he's had some zeros, but he does have some good upside here, and he has some utility, especially since he's been getting walked and has stolen base potential. Then we'll look at Jeremy Pena, who's cheap enough over here on FanDuel to consider him. He does have some home run potential, but he's really not hit the ball very well to start the year, despite having some hits in almost every game. Then we're going to look at Kiki Hernandez, or Enrique Hernandez, whichever way, for Boston. Hernandez, where are you? There he is. For Boston, he has some nice upside in this matchup, but he hasn't hit the ball really well to start the year. He's kind of a boom or bust home run potential type of play, but he has some utility on the slate regardless. And then to the outfield, we have some really good options with Aaron Judge being extremely expensive, but definitely viable on the slate. High risk, high reward, obviously. We do need to hit him a home run if he's going to pay off here. Ohtani is actually cheap enough that he is viable here at $3,800. he's a little bit high risk, but he has home run potential, and both he and Trout have good upside in this matchup. However, Trout's quite a bit more expensive than he is, and he hasn't hit the ball as well as Ohtani has to start the year. Then we're going to look at some value plays with Marte for New York Mets, and he's just a little bit underpriced here on FanDuel, so I definitely think he's a viable option here. Though he's not a must play, he is a decent play on the slate. Cedric Mullins is a very good option today for Baltimore on the slate. Despite the fact he hasn't hit the ball very well, he's had several stolen bases throughout the season already, and he gets walked a bunch, and so that definitely gives him some upside here, and he does have home run potential as well. Then we're going to look at Toscar Hernandez, who's just way too cheap here on FanDuel for his potential here. Seattle is hitting the ball pretty well, and he's got some nice upside in this matchup. Though he's kind of a boomer bust play, he has some home run potential here regardless. Then we're going to look at Steven Kwan, who I really do like here. He's a little bit pricey for FanDuel, considering the fact he's not really a home run threat, but he does have base hitting and stolen bases and stuff, which he should do pretty well on this slate. Josh Naylor can also play in this position if you want an outfield as opposed to first base, and so he has some nice utility here. Brandon Nimmo also has some utility at $3,000. He's very well priced, though I do feel like he needs to start hitting the ball better before I start using him every day at this price range. And then Giancarlo Stanton, he has some nice upside here for the Yankees. They've hit the ball really well to start the year. He's hitting home runs, but he's kind of up and down. But he does have some utility here on this matchup at his price point. And then finally, Chase McCormick, he has some nice upside in this matchup. He's high risk, high reward here, but he does have home run potential in this situation. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. Make sure to throw your home run calls in the comments below, and have a nice day, guys.